Faith was being tested throughout East Texas after 10 churches had been burned down at the beginning of 2010. Investigators were desperate to catch the individuals behind the crimes.
6:10 a.m. 3 seconds, February 4, 2010.
Bandit County 911.
Yes, there's a fire in Wolf Point.
At the church next door to the fire department?
Yes.
You burn God's house, at some point you're going to get caught.
The seventh fire happened in downtown Willis Point. It would be the most dangerous of the church fires. The roof collapsed around firefighters, nearly killing 2 of them as they worked to put out the flames.
Lord, what has happened? I was just devastated. I immediately started crying, and you think about the memories.
The final fires would take place the evening of February 8th, only 39 days since the first fire at Little Hope Baptist Church in Canton.
This was the first black church that had burned, and they had people buried from years before. They have the cemetery black. You know, it's just a shame that something like that would happen.
Near the county lines for Smith and Van Zandt counties, Jason Bork and Daniel McAllister, the 2 young men responsible for setting the fires, hit their 9th and 10th marks. Dover Baptist Church and Clear Spring Missionary Baptist Church. We
started working both of those fires, and the same thing we were finding, the hymnals and anything you could find, pew cushions and things like that, stacked together in order to do the fire.
And then nothing. The church fires stopped, but things didn't cool off. Law enforcement started a hotline for East Texans to call in with tips. This would be how the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or the ATF, learned Bork and McAllister's names.
We got a phone call from a female saying that her husband was good friends with 2 guys that had claimed that they were the ones doing these church fires.
That call changed it all. 17-year-old Brianna Wilkerson would tell the police that one night while backroading, her now former husband's friends admitted to him about the arsons.
He told me they admitted to doing the fires to him, and I wasn't allowed to say anything.
Investigators brought both Brianna and Richard Wilkerson in for questioning. While Brianna felt the pair could have set the fires, Richard would tell police he wasn't sure it was his friends.
And they were joking about, all these churches catching on fire and everything. And this is when it first started happening. Well, I didn't know if, I didn't really know if it was true or not, so I was like, I blew it off. I was like, whatever.
Smith County Sheriff Larry Smith was working this case back in 2010 with the ATF. He says talking with the teenagers provided insight into who he believed Bork and McAllister were. It turned out the 2 young men had both attended the First Baptist of Ben Wheeler.
Well, they were in the nursery together at church and grew up together.
Jason Bork was raised in Lindale by his grandparents. He graduated from Van High School at the top of his class.
He was a debate champion. He was a Eagle Scout. Got everything he wanted, just about.
In 2010, Bork was 19 and attending Tyler Junior College after being kicked out of the University of Texas at Tyler.
He goes to UT Tyler, and he's no longer the big man on campus.
At 21 years old, McAllister was traveling back and forth by bus from East Texas to the San Antonio area to see his fiancée.
He was living with my husband's parents, but he moved to San Antonio.
Daniel McAllister grew up in Ben Wheeler with his parents and 2 older sisters, Christy and Jessica. He was homeschooled, but never graduated. McAllister's sister Christy would later tell police before the fires, Daniel had been working in construction.
And he said he'd been off because they had run out of work or were waiting on materials or something, and then he just never went back.
When he was 19, McAllister's mother passed away from a stroke. Small town gossip was that Daniel's faith went with her.
My mom was real big in church, and she was the nursery director there. She was there every time the doors were open.
Law enforcement didn't need to reach out to McAllister's family to learn about him. Christy is a dispatcher for the Department of Public Safety and overheard her brother's best friend's name on a phone call for the investigation. She would tell them everything they needed to know, starting with the fact she felt Jason was bad news.
He just had gotten into some stuff that my brother had told me about with drugs that I didn't, my brother swore up and down he wasn't doing it either, but when you're hanging around it, you're just as guilty as doing it. So.
With the help of family and friends, agents began following Bork and McAllister, and a lucky encounter would lead investigators to a pair of Skechers shoe prints, just like the ones found at the scenes of the fires.
Stay with CBS 19 throughout the week at 10 as we look back through the fire to remember the East Texas church fires.